Hey, and thanks for joining us on this week's episode of For All Things Lexington, the only show dedicated to Lexington, South Carolina, and where a spade is always a spade. Here we'll talk to and about people, places, groups, things to do, and places to go in and around Lexington, South Carolina. I'm your host, Angela Barrett, and this is For All Things Lexington. Brought to you in part by GervaisStreetBridge.com, Columbia's most unforgettable free-to-list business directory. Hey guys, and thanks for watching today. I have with me today Kevin Hardy of the Hardy Law Firm here in Lexington, South Carolina. Now he has some pretty interesting specialties that he does. He has his area of practices, and correct me if I'm wrong, probate, estate planning, business law, but some of your what I call unique specialties are elderly law, guardianships, conservatorship, special needs trusts, and Medicaid asset protection.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, thank you for letting me be here and talk with you today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's break them down. Probate.
Yes, probate is what happens after somebody passes away, and it's a way of legally distributing their assets to their heirs or devisees in their will. The people, if they've written a will, who they want their assets to go to. If they don't have a will, who the legislature has determined their assets go to.
And so, I guess along with that, if somebody needed a will, you could do a will as well. That would be part of, I guess, maybe in the estate planning.
Exactly,
okay.
Yes.
So I jumped ahead of myself. Okay, so like if somebody has a problem with probate, let's just say, comes up a lot. Mom and dad, the last one passed away, but the kids need to go ahead and sell the house. It's tied up in probate.
Yeah, so that's one really important reason to have a will. Usually a will give the personal representative the power to sell the property without court approval. And so without that will, while the probate case is open, if you do need to sell the house, you have to get court approval. That takes at least a month, costs several $1,000s. And it has to serve everybody with an interest in the estate in order to get that approval from the court. So it adds delay to the process.
So there's always been this big discussion about if I have a will, if I have the house in the will to go to George, it won't get tied up in probate. Is that true?
No, it still has to go through probate to get to George. It's clear, obviously, where it's going, but we still have to go through probate.
Will it be tied up that full year that it's in probate, or it's usually a year, I guess?
Yeah, potentially 8 to 12 months, and it could be. There are ways, though, to avoid that. If we want to talk about doing a revocable living trust, we can then specify that the trustee distributes the house to George immediately upon the owner's death.
Okay.
So there are ways around it, but if you just have a will that says house goes to George, we're looking at probate still.
And I'm pretty sure I'm still jumping into that estate planning, so while we're here, let's talk about that.
Sure.
So other than the couple of things that we've already talked about, what else goes into the estate planning?
So yeah, it's a will that would determine what happens with your stuff when you die. But just as important, we also want to talk about who can manage your stuff while you're alive, but unable to take care of your stuff. So we have a business power of attorney or durable power of attorney to designate an agent. And usually married people want their spouse to do that, but then you need some alternates if your spouse isn't available. Or unmarried people, it's probably even more important to have. Same thing for making healthcare decisions. It's a different document, so you can designate the same people to make healthcare decisions, but some people have one sibling who's great with business and money, and another sibling that they think is the better person to make healthcare decisions. So we can do different things for those two different avenues.
Yeah. All right, business law.
Yeah, I help people form LLCs or corporations if they're starting a small business. or even selling or purchasing a small business.
So, what are some of the benefits of doing LLC versus, for a lot of small businesses? I mean, especially if it's an individual, they just file their taxes by their Social Security. So, what are the benefits there?
It really kind of protects you in case there are judgments against your business. They're against your business and not you personally. So, if done properly, we can separate those two things so that you don't end up, there's no potential of you losing your house over business debts.
Right. And what about tax implications as far as?
So I don't dive too deeply into taxes.
Sure.
I refer people to their accountants.
Stay in your lane, that's what I do.
Exactly. Depending, there may or may not be tax differences. Like you mentioned, a single member LLC from the IRS perspective is disregarded. It's just like you're doing business as a sole proprietorship, but you have that legal protection from creditors.
I gotcha. All right, so let's get into your specialties, and pretty unique. The elderly law.
Yeah, so elder law ties into the estate planning, but instead of focusing solely on what happens to your stuff when you pass away, it's more preparing you for your whole life and the various cycles of that. So as people progress, if they need in-home care or assisted living or eventually nursing home care, we want them to be prepared for that, both having the right legal documentation, but then even especially on the nursing home, long-term care side, looking at how can they pay for that.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Not fun subjects to talk about, but all necessary, because I know I have parents up in age, and most of my friends do as well, and it's a hard, for us, this is a hard age because of where they are in life. And
Yes.
dealing with, like you said, nursing homes or care, or even if it's in-home care or whatever it might be, it is not fun to talk about, but it is necessary. Now, guardianship.
Yeah, so that comes up in several cases. I have some clients with young adults, just turned 18 and they're chronically disabled. For example, children with Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, they need a guardianship for them to be able to make medical decisions. And in some cases, it's not always necessary, but if it is necessary in a particular situation. And then we also see guardianship sometimes being necessary in older people who develop dementia, or sometimes even people of other ages who have had traumatic brain injury from a car crash or some other accident like that, mm-hmm. who have a diminished capacity, can't handle their own affairs, or can't make their own health care decisions and sometimes, again, that can be avoided if they've done the estate planning documents with a healthcare power of attorney, but sometimes we find they haven't, and so we have no choice but to seek a guardianship for them.
So a lot of this, at least so far, kind of tie into each other. Like if you've done this, and you've done this, then that helps you here.
Exactly.
So it all kind of is webbed together, I guess.
Yes.
Now, conservatorship.
Yes, that
conservatorship.
Yeah, similar to guardianship, where a guardian handles the person, where they live, and their health care decisions. The conservatorship handles their funds, their assets, any real estate or other property they own, their bank accounts, all their assets. So sometimes those are tied together, that we're requesting both at the same time. Some cases, somebody only needs a guardianship or only needs a conservatorship, but those are related.
So when you have an older parent or maybe a Down syndrome child who can't necessarily make all of their medical decisions, is that going to be, that's going to be a guardianship?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And in some states, they use the term guardianship for both. They'll say guardian of the person and guardian of the estate.
Okay.
But here we call guardian of the estate a conservatorship.
Okay. Now, the special needs trust.
Yes, that's important, again, for families who have somebody who's disabled. And if they want to leave assets, if a grandparent wants to leave assets to their disabled child or grandchild, those people who are receiving certain government benefits, such as SSI, if they own a certain amount of assets, they're no longer eligible for their SSI. But by doing a special needs trust, we can get that money where it's available for a separate trustee will manage the funds, but can purchase things for the disabled individual that the government benefits won't pay for. And have it structured in such a way, though, that it won't affect their ability to continue to receive those government benefits.
Okay, I think I understand all that, but that was a lot.
Yeah.
But it would be more in lines with, let's just say, anybody was left, again, something from their grandparents, but they have a trustee that's in charge of dispersing that or making sure they get it only at a certain
Correct.
time? Okay.
Yeah, they disperse it in such a manner that it doesn't disqualify them from their benefits.
Okay.
So they can use it to pay for certain things that the disabled person needs, but won't just give them cash that disqualifies them from Medicaid or SSI or other benefits that they're receiving.
So the sole purpose really is to protect, make sure they still get those funds, but can use the other money or whatever it is.
Yes.
When they.
Yeah, for things that they're allowed to without disturbing those benefits.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh, I did not even know that existed.
Yeah.
Now the Medicaid asset protection.
Yeah, and that relates to elder law and particularly funding long-term care. So for people who need a nursing home, there's kind of three pots of money available. It's the money you have in the bank or assets you can sell to create money. There's long-term care insurance, which few people have, and it's great for the people who have it, but it's expensive to get and more difficult to get. And then the third pot of money is Medicaid program. And so a lot of people find themselves using up their assets and then having to fall back on Medicaid. But there are some strategies we can use to legally get those benefits and protect as much of a person's assets as we can. Again, legally disclosing everything to the government on a Medicaid application. But we can try to preserve as much of that, the individual's assets, and so hopefully pass down some to their family, and have those available, and especially for married people, leave as much for a spouse to have while still getting the spouse needing the nursing home the care that he or she needs.
Right, because you do hear of situations where I guess people are in that catch-22.
Yes.
And I would imagine that would help out if people knew about it. I
Right.
don't know that everybody knows about that.
Right. No, and so that's part of why I'm here today.
Yeah. Now, how did you get into some of these specialty areas? I mean, what was...
I practiced law initially doing real estate, and then was doing some wills on kind of as a small part of my practice. And over time, I realized I really liked that, helping people a whole lot more than just being a cog in the wheel of a real estate closing.
Sure.
So I kind of shifted my practice over the years, and now don't do any real estate closings. Instead, focus just on the estate planning, probate, elder law work.
Yeah. I think this is really neat. When your marketing director called and told me about this, I was like, what would an attorney want to be on a podcast for? And then I realized how unique some of the things that you do, and I thought, wow, I want to hear about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. Now, how long have you been practicing in Lexington?
So I've been practicing law since 2007. I've lived in Lexington since 2009, but it was in 2020 that I moved my office here to Lexington.
Now, where did you come from?
I grew up in Georgia, went to college in Texas, and ended up spending about 6 years there, worked for a semiconductor company for a few years after graduating college, and ended up going to law school at USC. So I've been in South Carolina ever since.
Well, we're glad, and especially glad that you're here in Lexington. Now, you have a daughter, I think, and how old is she?
She's 10 years old in the
Oh.
5th grade.
What a great age.
Yes.
Right before teenage years.
Right, yes, we're enjoying it now.
Right. Before the boys come along. Yeah, I saw you were a graduate of the University of Texas, but then went to law school at USC. Now, what do you do for fun?
You know, I do enjoy cooking and like reading, especially mystery thrillers. Yeah, detective thrillers.
Cool. Now you obviously live in Lexington. Tell me where some of your favorite, or name at least a couple of favorite restaurants or places y'all like to go.
You know, I enjoy Diablo's. I really like Mexican food, so enjoy their tacos. And trying to think of some other good places. We do like the Root Cellar, just to get our good country cooking.
Yes, they even have fried chicken livers, which you don't find very much.
Right, right. And I usually skip those.
Well, I don't get them either, but I'm
Yes.
tempted every time. And when you grew up where I grew up, that was, we had those.
Yeah.
All right, so how would people, if they're interested in, having a will or an estate planning or any of these specialties, how will they get in touch with you?
You know, the best way is to visit my website. It's kevinhardylaw.com, KevinHardylaw.com. From there, I do have my phone number as well as a contact page where you can go ahead and book either a phone call, Zoom appointment, or in-person appointment.
Gotcha. Okay. And I did remember a question I wanted to ask you. So when it comes to a trustee, do you give advice on whether it should be a family member or like an attorney or someone from a bank? I mean, what do you think the best policy on that is?
It needs to be somebody you trust.
Yeah.
And so for some
trustee.
people, yes, that is if there's a family member or even a friend that they trust unconditionally. Some people, they don't necessarily have that, so we do look at banks or trust companies. Of course, they charge a fee for their services, but they are going to do everything exactly as you've specified in the trust for fear of being sued.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did remember the other question. So as far as how the importance of having a will, I do know that in my past work, I'll say past life, the things that people argue over,
Yes.
because and there's not a will. I mean, a couch that has been in a garage for 10 years that the cats are sleeping on now becomes a sore spot.
Yes. And unfortunately, a death brings out the worst in families.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it really is. I mean, talk a little bit about how, more cases than that. I mean, at least have a will in place.
Yeah, that's the bare minimum. Every adult needs a will. Even when they think I don't have much, it's a whole lot easier for your family to deal with whatever you do have, even if it's just a car, and even if there's money owed on the car, dealing with the car company
Right.
to turn it back in, it's still, you need the will to designate who can be your personal representative and take care of this stuff for you. Especially if you have minor children, designate a successor guardian in case something happens to both parents who will take care of your children until they're 18.
Yeah, I really need to update mine because I still have a bird that did pass away, but the bird was supposed to outlive me by many, many years. So I have him still in the will. I guess I need to update that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. People should revisit it at least every 5 years.
Yeah.
And I am always glad to sit down with people with old wills and review to see if anything's changed. I don't charge for that, to just look over things and see. I'm not going to charge somebody to update something that doesn't need to be updated. But
Right.
we often, in reviewing, do find that there are things that need to be updated.
Like taking the bird out.
Yes.
All right, so if you had 5 minutes of the whole world's attention, what would you tell them?
I'd say do the little things. It's the simple things like putting your cart back in the stall at the grocery store.
Yes.
That, you're obviously able to push the cart all around the store. It's another 10 steps to put it in the back in the corral so that it's not in the lot taking up a spot that you drive off from and the next person can't park there without moving it. The little things like that.
I agree. I love it. Yeah, and nobody has said that yet. I like it. I like it. Well, I just want to thank you so much for letting me come and talk with you. And guys, I think everybody needs to come in and talk to Mr. Hardy, because we probably all are lacking in these areas. And this was great information. Thank you.
Thank you for having me today.
Thanks. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a person, business, idea, an event that Lexington needs to know more about, email me, local@forallthingslexington.com. That's the number 4, y'all.
This episode was brought to you by the real estate agents at Home Matters, building on service, relationships, and on what matters to you. Find out how you matter and how they can help you with buying and selling your home at homematterssc.com.